The headlines: the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops says it is more than ready to be part of the leading team in the dialogue process. New Labour Party President Fresha Siwale, who has been in incarceration for about 30 days for defamation of the president, has been granted a fresh bail with relaxed conditions. And over 74.2 million is required to address the critical needs of Congolese refugees in Zambia. With the Q News in detail, my name is Chitalu Chinsenge. The Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops ZCCB says it is more than ready to be part of the leading team in the dialogue process. President Edgar Lungu has appealed to the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue to immediately find the necessary space for the church to join the leadership of the dialogue process. ZCCB Secretary General Father Cleophas Lungu tells Q News that the church has always been ready to collaborate with any stakeholder, not only in the dialogue process but also in facilitating reconciliation. Father Lungu says the ZCCB is also ready to collaborate with the ZCID in facilitating the dialogue process in order to achieve the desired results. He says the church is further prepared to engage all political parties in the country in the dialogue process and be able to provide spiritual guidance to the nation. Father Lungu adds that the Catholic Church is also more than ready to collaborate with any international organization, such as the Commonwealth, in the dialogue process.
Well, from time immemorial, the Church has always said that it is available to not only participate in the process of national dialogue that is aimed at reconciliation, but also to provide that leadership and moral guidance to the nation. And we believe that we are ready to collaborate not only with ZCID, because we believe that's one of those stakeholders participating in the process. We are ready to collaborate with all political leaders from across the spectrum of political parties in the nation. We are ready and stand willing to participate and provide that spiritual leadership. And we are ready to collaborate even with our international partners, inclusive of the Commonwealth.
Political analyst Alex Ngoma says President Edgar Lungu and UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema are now speaking the same language with regards to the dialogue process. This follows President Lungu's welcoming of the UPND suggestion for the church to be the one to lead the national dialogue process. Dr. Ngoma says this should give hope to the Zambian people. He states that this clearly indicates that the two leaders are now ready to sit down and on one platform and address the matters affecting the nation. President Lungu, in a statement issued by his spokesperson, Amos Chanda, has noted that the UPND, which has been against the locally driven process, is now in agreement that the church, which is the conscience of the nation, must be the center of all efforts at consensus building and the envisaged broader national dialogue.
I think that we should take that as a very good sign for things yet to happen. It is beginning to give hope to the country that maybe our two leaders are now more willing than ever before to meet at a negotiating table. That is what this, I think, gesture symbolizes. It is a sign of hope that our leaders are getting closer to, beginning to stand and discuss their differences.
Patriots for Economic Progress, PEP President Sean Tembo, has given the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue a 48-hour ultimatum to warn State House against interfering in operations, failure to which he will resign as ZCID board member. Mr. Tembo says the statement issued by presidential spokesperson Amos Chanda on how ZCID must conduct the ongoing dialogue process does not only undermine the independence of the ZCID but also casts aspersions on the capacity of the ZCID to facilitate the dialogue process. He states that if the Patriotic Front had any suggestions on how the ongoing dialogue process can be enhanced by incorporating players such as the church, The right approach should have been through their two representatives to the board and not through a statement from State House. Mr. Tembo adds that by virtue of the presidential spokesperson shouting instructions to ZCID through the media, it creates an impression that the ZCID board is made up of puppets who report to State House.
As a member of the Board of Governors of Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue, I am greatly concerned that yesterday Mr. Amos Chanda, the presidential spokesperson, issued a statement basically dictating how the president wants this dialogue process to go. As a center and as a board member of the center, my belief is that ZCID should not take instructions from State House. If the PF had any submission to make in terms of how they would want this dialogue process to be undertaken, they are supposed to table a proposal to the board, and that proposal would be considered accordingly. So in view of this, I strongly feel that that particular gesture by Mr. Amos Chanda basically portrayed us board members of the center as puppets of the Patriotic Front and people who basically take instructions from the PF. And some of us strongly resent that portrayal. And on this basis, I have basically made a decision that the center needs to issue a strong statement rebuking Mr. Amos Chanda on his statement. And if the center fails to do that, then I will basically have no option but to tender my resignation as a member of the Board of Governors of the Zambia Center for Inter-Party Dialogue.
Meanwhile, Economic and Equity Party President Chilufya Tayali has cautioned State House against falling into the temptation of hijacking the role of facilitator at the National Dialogue. Mr. Tayali is advising State House to avoid issuing statements that appear to be directives to the ZCID. He says his party does not expect the ZCID to equally receive any instructions from the opposition UPND. Mr. Tayali has told Q News that the national dialogue that has commenced is about all political parties and is not between President Lungu and UPND leader Hakainde Hichilema. He says his party holds a position that the dialogue, that the ZCID must only play the role of facilitator of the national dialogue as opposed to taking up the role of mediator. Mr. Tayali states that the onus of who should be mediator of the dialogue lies with all political parties that are participating in the dialogue.
I think what we started together with the Commonwealth to look at, various problems which we are facing as political parties is the right way. And the meeting that we had at Mulungushi kick-started that process where we brought out issues to say these are the issues which we are facing, which are a problem, and we need to see where we can change, how we can change them, so that everyone can freely participate. So, in that case, you cannot just be emphasizing HH Edgar Lungu. It is very wrong. It is very wrong. And if we talk about the process that we have started, ZCID has the capacity. ZCID has the capacity. This issue of people saying, no, it doesn't have capacity. What capacity are you talking about? What capacity? Because all ZCID is doing is facilitating, not mediating.
New Labour Party President Fresha Suwale, who has been in incarceration for about 30 days, after failing to meet his bail conditions in the matter in which he is charged with defamation of the president, has been granted a fresh 25,000 kwacha bail in his own recognizance, with 2 working sureties in the like sum from reputable working institutions. This was after his lawyer Keith Mwember applied for mild bail conditions, informing the court that his client has remained incarcerated after failing to meet the previous bail conditions. Previously, the court granted Mr. Suwale 10,000 kwacha bail in his own recognizance, with 2 working sureties from government institutions at managerial level or directorship. But when the matter came up before Magistrate Alice Walusiku for commencement of trial, his lawyer indicated that it has been difficult for their client to meet bail conditions because the matter has political connotations, and no civil servant has been willing to sign a bail on his behalf. Mr. Mwemba asked the court to grant the accused fresh bail conditions as he was a political figure, a leader of a political party, and was willing to attend court when required. Magistrate Walusiku granted Suwale a fresh bail but reminded him that he would remain incarcerated until he met the bail conditions. Meanwhile, during the trial in the matter, movie television journalist Mavuto Piri told the court that he produced the 1 hour 30 minutes assignment program where Mr. Siwale is alleged to have referred to President Lungu as an identity thief, further stating that he is not the actual Edgar Chagwa Lungu but Jonathan Mutawale. The state presented before the court a DVD of the said program, which was viewed in court. But Mr. Siwale's lawyer Gilbert Piri objected to the presentation of the DVD as evidence, arguing that its contents could have been altered to suit the state. Magistrate Walusiku has since adjourned the matter to 6th and 20th June 2018 for mention and 5th July for continued trial. Over 74.2 million United States dollars is required in 2018 to address the critical needs of Congolese refugees in Zambia. And government estimates the number of refugees coming from the Democratic Republic of Congo will exceed 76,000 by 31st December 2018. Speaking during the launch of the Regional Refugee Response Plan in Lusaka, Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kambiongo appealed for increased support from donors, development partners, NGOs, the private sector, and other institutions in order to enable government to fulfill its obligations. Mr. Kampiongo says there is need for adequate facilities at entry and transit points to cater for expected new arrivals. We have more in this report.
The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, is at the center of one of the most complex but forgotten refugee crises globally. Recently, worrying dynamics have manifested, with conflicts breaking out in previously peaceful provinces and existing conflict degenerating. The situation in DRC is a matter of grave concern, affecting more and more people as it continues. It is against this background that the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, and other partners have developed the Zambian chapter of the Democratic Republic of Congo Regional Refugee Response Plan to deal with the refugee crisis. The plan was launched in Lusaka by Home Affairs Minister Stephen Kampiongo, who said the number of refugees in Zambia is likely to increase to 76,000 by December 31st, 2018.
To facilities in refugee settlements and social amenities in refugee hosting areas will equally be inadequate. While creating new infrastructure in Mantapala is urgent, there is also a need to improve conditions and basic services in Maheba refugee settlement to prepare it to host more refugees in an event of a new influx.
And United Nations Resident Coordinator Janet Rogan said 17 UN agencies have been deployed in Luapula in response to the inflow of refugees coming from neighboring DRC.
While the global and regional level set the scene in this way, the issues confront us at the national level. For over 40 years, Zambia has been a place of safe haven for people seeking refuge from conflict in its immediate neighborhood and from further afield. Whether in the days of the frontline states and the independence struggles, through civil wars or other unrest and conflict. Since January last year, around 21,000 citizens of Congo DR have crossed into Zambia.
Some of the UN agencies present took turns to highlight the works they are doing in Luapula.
UNHCR, UN agencies and NGOs have and will continue to work together in partnership and in close coordination with the government and local authorities to ensure that the needs of the refugees are met.
In all of this, we've aimed for an integrated response to ensure that Zambian communities are also benefiting from the services that are being put in place. And as our emergency funding comes to an end, more support will be needed as we seek a sustainable approach to the care of refugees.
WFP introduced livelihood support to host communities in Mantapala this month. With a funding shortfall, however, we will be unable to introduce livelihood support among the refugees themselves as planned later this year. This threatens to be the case while we know that supporting refugees with vouchers in combination with livelihood initiatives further facilitates the process of building sustainable and resilience.
And Congolese ambassador to Zambia, Mayele Benedine, praised the Zambian government for hosting over 40,000 refugees so far.
Nous remercions très sincèrement le gouvernement zambien.
We sincerely thank the government of Zambia
du fait qu'ils abritent certains réfugiés congolais depuis très longtemps.
Hosting the Congolese refugees for so long.
And this refugee became emotional as he asked for more help from stakeholders.
I'm 52 and a half years old, but there are children and many of us whose lives have just been shattered. We need your help for all these services provided to assist us.
They plan to ensure a coherent and comprehensive interagency response, particularly through productive relationships with the government, non-governmental organizations, and civil society organizations. For QTV News, Albert Mpezeni in Lusaka.
Zamtel has instituted investigations into the unloading of unauthorized scratch cards which have been circulated on the market by unknown people. Zamtel Corporate Communications Manager Kennedy Mambwe says the company has since blocked some scratch cards it suspects to be on the market illegally. Mr. Mambwe has appealed to the customers who have bought such cards to go to any Zamtel outlet to have them swapped so that they are not inconvenienced. He has told a media briefing that Zamtel has also engaged the Drug Enforcement Commission and other law enforcers to ensure that all perpetrators are brought to book. He says anyone who will be found wanting will be answerable to the law. Mr. Mambwe has further revealed that Zamtel will invest more in automated requisition processes for stock, which includes SIM cards and scratch cards, to avoid what transpired in future.
When a whistleblower, came forward and brought this information to us, and we made some deliberate steps internally to authenticate whether this allegation was indeed true, we found that there was some element of truth to it, because we found talk time that is not supposed to be on the market. And when we checked our system, we realized, yes, this is something that is worth pursuing. So yes, there is a measure by which we are able to know by just checking our database and our serial numbers, hence why we have blocked a certain range. Like I said earlier, we have blocked a certain range. Right now you can go to our shops and anywhere else, you will still buy talk time. So it's not everything that has been blocked. It's just a particular range that we are suspecting. Now, in terms of quantifying it, right now, like I said, it's a little bit preemptive, because it would appear this is an undertaking that was done by people familiar with the distribution channel. It would appear that it is something that has been done by people who have mastered, stock movement. So it would be too premature to say so much stock is missing, because we are still in the verification process, and also because we've involved the investigative wings. It's too early to say how much worth of talk time is out there on the market. But yes, the truth is there is stock on the market that we suspect to have left Zamtel confines fraudulently.
The Lusaka magistrate has sentenced the Zambia employee to 5 years simple imprisonment for stealing over 1 million kwacha from her employer. Carol Tembo, who was a cashier at Novatech, a subsidiary of Zambif, was charged with 6 counts of theft by a servant, which occurred between the 17th of October and 1st November 2017. When the matter came up for judgment before Magistrate Felix Kalma, the accused was found guilty on all the 6 counts. In mitigation, Tembo asked the court for leniency, as she was a first offender with aged parents she was currently taking care of. She also told the court that she was pursuing studies and that convicting her would traumatize her and will not concentrate on her studies. But Magistrate Kalma said that he considered what the accused had said in mitigation, but also considered the number of counts involved and the amount in each count. and therefore decided to sentence her to 5 years simple imprisonment. Mr. Tembo was charged with the theft of 10,000 kwacha in the first count, 232,948 kwacha in the second count, 327 kwacha in the third count, and 349 kwacha in the fourth count, 29,487 kwacha in the fifth count, and 76,860 kwacha in the sixth count. President Edgar Lungu has directed the Ministry of Housing and Infrastructure Development to restructure some contracts in the road infrastructure sector in order to speed up road construction taking place in the country. Ministry of Housing and Infrastructure Development Permanent Secretary Charles Mushota says the Road Development Agency, working in collaboration with the National Road Fund Agency, is engaging contractors to ensure that road works are accelerated. Mr. Mushota has reiterated that government has prioritized funding to contractors whose construction projects are at 80% and above. He says this follows a recent directive by President Lungu that allows construction projects which are 80% and above must be funded so that they are completed. And Mr. Mushota has also told Q News that following the President's directive, the process of paying of local contractors which started in 2016 has been accelerated in 2018. He discloses that in the first and second quarters of 2018, government has made strides in clearing the debts it owes local contractors. Meanwhile, Mr. Mushota says road works in the country had slowed down because of the rainy season, among other reasons.
I think it's not a secret that in the first and second quarter of 2018, government has made efforts to try and pay, especially the local contractors, to reduce what is owed to the contractors. But also, government, through His Excellency the President, Mr. Edgar Chagwa Lungu, did give instructions to the Council of Ministers, the task force which I had appointed to oversee that the road projects, not only the road projects, all the construction projects are accelerated. And to that effect, he gave very specific instructions that for contracts or for projects which are 80% and above complete, money should be found, paid to the contractors so that the contractors can expeditiously proceed with work so that the Zambian people immediately they can commence accessing the services or using that infrastructure development. So again, the government has prioritized paying for contractors for all the projects which are 80% complete and above. And I wish to thank the President and the Committee of Ministers which were put in place that we have seen this being actualized, and some contractors already have been paid, but we are still waiting for more finances so that we can take advantage of the dry season to implement most of these projects. But
Support for Vulnerable Children and Active Leadership Savuko founder Eugene Machona has advised political parties not to mix the dialogue and reconciliation processes, saying dialogue is beyond political parties. Mr. Machona has told Q News that while the dialogue process has been misinterpreted and centered around the ruling PF and opposition UPND by some people, in reality the process should be for all interested parties, because dialogue is about exploring ways on how best government should run national affairs for the benefit of all Zambians regardless their background. He says dialogue should therefore be viewed as a platform for all stakeholders to air their concerns regarding the way government is running the national affairs. And Mr. Machona has expressed hope that the suspension of the Constitution Amendment Bill will pave way for the smooth occurrence of the dialogue process. Mr. Machona has since commended President Lungu directing the suspension of the Constitution Amendment Bill process so that the resolutions from the dialogue process can be included in the amendment bill.
When we talk about dialogue, it's more categorized on the PF and the UPND. That's a different thing on its own. It requires for a reconciliation process between the two parties. When they reconcile, a dialogue is another thing. Well, okay, now that we have reconciled, what do we hope to see? You know, when you're having a reconciliation process, it's only conditions on how you are going to agree on both parties. But when talking about a dialogue, it involves everyone. It involves the affairs of the nation. So really, today we see the two parties actually giving directions. It's either the ruling party, they will say, this party will lead the dialogue. Or the other party will say, no, actually I also want the church to lead the dialogue. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about a dialogue, it involves every key stakeholder, because we are talking about the affairs of the nation that involves everyone. If you're talking about the reconciliation process between the two parties on how they've been treating each other, that's a different case, which has to be conducted differently. And there now, either UPND or PF can decide to say who's going to take the lead in the reconciliation process between the two parties. But when I talk about the dialogue, it involves everyone, because everyone has to have a participation in that. All these political parties, all the civil service, society organizations, churches, and so on, so that they can also be heard.
Eastern Province Permanent Secretary Chanda Kasolo is impressed with the smart care system that has been introduced in most health centers in the province. Mr. Kasolo says the system where patients are given electronic cards with information on their health status and can be used anywhere has made the provision of health services to the people quicker. He says the system is impressive because it has done away with paperwork and quickened the process of getting details of a particular patient. The Permanent Secretary is optimistic that health centers throughout the country will embrace the new technology as a way of efficiently and effectively offering health care services to the people. Mr. Kasolo has also called for close collaboration between the health facilities and institutions that offer digital technology services, especially in rural areas, so that the e-health system can be effectively implemented.
That is light years ahead of what old system was. It also prevents a lot of what has been happening before, a lot of fraud in the system, because being manual, things can go missing and so on. We're now very able to know who has collected their cards and where they have cashed using those cards. Just recently, one of our most recently commissioned hospitals in my province called Chipata District Hospital, we have pioneered a paperless system. So all the patients that come to the hospital are issued with a card, just like a bank ATM card, and all the details go on there. And it is really amazing, because I've taken two people there, the Deputy Secretary of the Cabinet, Mr. Bunga, and also the Secretary of the Cabinet. And it helped me understand what was going on. But this is a very, very efficient little hospital. And if we can introduce that throughout our hospitals, it will make things really easy to deal with.
Energy expert Chico Mdenda has advised Zambians to always ensure their rooms have ventilation as they use braziers in the house during this cold season to avoid carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide poisoning. Speaking in an interview with Q News, Mr. Mdenda notes that during the cold season, a lot of people use braziers for warming up rooms, that in some instances results in accidents and eventually results in loss of lives. He states that it is also important when using braziers to leave windows open to avoid any poisoning. Mr. Mdenda has further advised that braziers should not be left to the children and supervised, as this is dangerous. He adds that it is also dangerous to sleep with a brazier in the house, as it may result in a fire disaster.
We need to remind our masses or our population. Now we are in the cold season. We are at a point where we increase our usage of mbaulas for heating purposes. I mean, the first one would be you need to ventilate your rooms to avoid carbon monoxide and hydrogen cyanide poisoning. So my first advice is, please, when you are using a charcoal mbaula or malasha mbaula, please open your windows The second one is, whatever happens, do not allow children to be close to the Mbaula unsupervised. At any given time, there must be an adult to supervise the children. The third one is, make sure you do not sleep with the Mbaula in the house. After some point, you take the Mbaula outside, leave it outside, better still, kill the fire.
The Southern Africa Cross-Border Traders Association, Zambia chapter, has called on the government of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo to put in place strict measures that will ensure that the outbreak of Ebola in the DRC does not affect the trade between the two countries. Association Secretary General Jacob Makambwe says the outbreak of Ebola in the DRC is very worrying and poses a threat to traders who conduct business between the two countries. Mr. Makambwe says there is need to put in place screening facilities to screen cross-border traders.
The reports of outbreak of Ebola in the DRC is quite worrying, news, and I think we've had a lot of issues to do with Ebola, especially in West Africa. I think governments, DRC and the Zambian government, needs to up their activities in terms of trying to provide adequate processes in terms of how it will not impact on the issues to do with trade. As much as it can be reported in far-flung areas, people actually move from one point to the other. So we would actually want to urge the authorities to make sure that the preventative measures and measures to make sure that Ebola doesn't spread to other countries is actually put in place.
At least 45 cases of Ebola have been reported in the DRC, with 26 people believed to have died since the outbreak began earlier this month. The World Health Organization has, however, stated that the outbreak is not yet an international public health emergency. Recently, Health Minister Dr. Chitalu Chilufya said extra precautionary measures have been put in place to mitigate the outbreak spreading to Zambia, despite the epicenter of the Ebola disease being thousands of kilometers away. The Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, CCPC, has encouraged consumers to come forward and report unfair trading practices. CCPC Commissioner, Consumer Protector Senior Investigator Mutuma Nakamboa has told Q News that it is also important that consumers know their rights in order to correctly respond to any situation. Mr. Nakamboa says consumers should always carefully check the expiry date of the goods they want to buy, as consuming expiry goods is harmful to health. He adds that consumers should also take time to compare prices in different shops so that they get a value for their money.
And thirdly, there is also need for consumers to report any unfair trading practices if they occur when they are shopping. Basically, as the Consumer Protection Commission, what we have done in terms of sensitization is that we have instituted massive sensitization across the nation. We have what we call chiefdom visitation, where we go into chiefdoms and educate the chiefs and their subjects on the bad practices of businesses and unfair trading practices. Then we also have what we call market sensitization, where we engage the traders, the retailers, then we educate them about unfair trading practices, about what the Consumer Competition and Consumer Protection Act talks about. Then we also have what we call the workshops, where we have engaged the judges, the magistrates, so we educate them once in a while on the provisions of the Act, so as when consumer cases is raised to the courts, they are aware of what the Act talks about. Then we also have workshops for the media houses. Like recently we had a workshop in Livingstone where we invited about 25 media houses just to train them on the Competition and Consumer Protection Act.
As we end the news, a recap of the headlines. The Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops, ZCCB, says it is more than ready to be part of the leading team in the dialogue process. New Labour Party President Fresha Siwali, who has been in incarceration for about 30 days for defamation of the president, has been granted a fresh bail with relaxed conditions, and over 74.2 million United States dollars is required to address the critical needs of Congolese refugees in Zambia. You can visit our website at www.qtvzambia.com for more news. My name is Chitalo Chinsenge. Pleasant viewing and God bless.